Michael Cloud. And Michael, I hate to just bombard you at 7:20 in the morning, but the applause is there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our studio audience is so wonderful.
I'm glad we got the headphones finally working. It took a move to a new studio to get headphones working.
He's got one ear, I think.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And that's okay. He's left-eared. The other day I heard there's a lady named Kelly, it doesn't matter. It's the Human Rights Coalition or something. And she's LGBTQ and a black lady. And she was saying, we need to look at the intent of the Constitution, not just words on a silly piece of paper. A silly piece of paper.
Yeah, people.
This is the left.
For that
Yeah.
quote.
Well, and this is the same woman that accuses the right of politicizing. I mean, this was her quote, something like basically telling everybody that transgender people are statistically irrelevant and it shouldn't be popular or shouldn't be politicized, but here she is politicizing them. I mean, it's just the irony in what she was saying was not lost upon me, but this is how they feel. He doesn't want you to have free speech, and I've said it here. I don't care what you say. I may not agree with it, but I will stand up for your rights to say it.
Sure, and the fact is that the only misinformation that they want is government-sponsored misinformation, and so to put yourself as the arbiter of truth, this is where humility in a position of government is so important, because you have these people who just we know ultimate power corrupts, and they are clinging for every piece of power that they can get. To control other people's lives, and we are at a dangerous precipice in our country to where they have all the words, but it's communism, it's authoritarianism that they're trying to foist on the American people with the sugarcoating of American dialect, and it's not what it is at all. And we've got to be wise and savvy to that.
Well, and they keep throwing out there, we've got to save our democracy, and they use that purposefully because we aren't a democracy. We're a constitutional republic, and they don't like to.
There's an entire Federalist paper where they talk about how they weigh a democracy and the benefits and pros and cons of it, and the pros and cons of a republic, and why we are not a democracy and why we are a republic. The Constitution says that our job in the federal level is to guarantee a Republican form of government. And so this is, again, one of the big misnomers that we have espoused out there. And of course, what they mean is basically they just want to get their way.
And our states are more pure democracies because basically 50 plus 1 and you're good, right? I mean, when it comes to most votes. But then they don't like the democracy when voters in states decide that we don't like this, so we're going to vote against it. Then they don't like the democracy when that happens, right?
The Dems are moving more like an autocracy with what they're doing with just shoving Kamala in there. You can play this for Michael. This is a good quote. We're joined by Michael Cloud, our congressman, and there's a guy asked a very straightforward question.
On a different front, Axios this week reported that
of Kamala Harris. Back that up and play it
will
for
sort
me
of dial
again.
back. On a different front, Axios this week reported that President Trump, if he gets a second term, will sort of dial back, for lack of a better term, DEI programs that the Biden administration has put in forth. Obviously, I know you disagree with that. I obviously believe that you don't want him to get a second term. That said, if that does happen, what do you think that would do to race relations in this country?
Well, let me say we're going to win, so it's not going to happen. But I think that, listen, today is actually, I believe, an anniversary in terms of Dr. King, right? And I was just in Selma, and we acknowledged the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. I think it's really important that we as Americans always embrace our history, the parts that we're proud of and the parts that we're not proud of, but that we can't forget. And we should all agree that we should teach history. We should learn history if we're to ever have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future. And that means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. It means
the future,
acknowledging
which is
the
today,
importance
tomorrow.
of the fact that everyone should have equal
So
opportunity.
just stop, because
to
it makes my
compete
stomach hurt.
and
This lady's
equity.
such an idiot.
And then, of course,
the guy asked her point blank, in the
Yeah.
event that Trump reverses the Biden administration's DEI agenda, how is that going to affect race relations?
Well,
I
then,
think the black
yeah.
community is going to be upset. I mean, there's an answer, but
There's
we
no
have
answer.
Isn't today, and today is just tomorrow, yesterday. We review Dr. King. I was just in Selma. You're just going down a rabbit trail with your ADD. Get the oil, get the essential oil, and get your head up.
Well, she talks about, we need to study history, which would be great. I don't disagree with that sentiment, but isn't she the one who wanted to be unburdened by the past? And,
Oh, the hypocrisy. There's another great quote, sir.
and of course, Dr. Martin Luther King was all about content of character and
Yeah.
merit and effort and working hard to.
There's
This is
the irony
great.
there too, right? Like, I mean, he's going to end DEI, but I remind voters every chance I get that I'm actually a black woman, and I mean, there's just
Right. And you've
there
got to
is no-
vote for me because I am a black woman.
There is no content of character anymore, and the colorless society that Dr. King was looking for just won't exist under this party.
Yeah, and what we see going on in society, I mean, a video I think just came out yesterday about NASA, and they're going through these like grief sessions, and I mean all this DEI craziness. Meanwhile, they have 2 astronauts stuck in space that they can't get back.
That was Boeing's fault.
I'm sure it was Boeing's fault.
Right.
The same deal with Boeing.
The government's gonna take over Boeing.
has had some issues lately, and one of their big priorities has not been the engineering. If only the E stood for engineering, we
Yeah,
would be making some progress. But it doesn't, and it's these nice words that don't mean. Again, it's they put a nice sugar coating on it, and they're fighting these semantic battles to try to get us as Americans to ignore the real ones, and it's crazy.
Give him that 27 second. There's a thing that says the greatest debate of all will be Kamala debating herself. You can hear her say something. It's a split screen. It shows her saying one thing, then it shows her saying something else. Just listen for 27 seconds.
Everyday prices are too high. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes. That is called Bidenomics. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today. Ground beef is up almost 50%. There's not much left at the end of the month. Bidenomics is working. The price of housing has gone up. It feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. And we are very proud of Bidenomics.
We're very proud of Bidenomics. She's from Atlanta now. I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah.
you knew that.
Yeah.
She's not from Montreal no more.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well,
this
the
lady.
truth is it's working. The whole shtick from the leftist Marxists is to you have government create the problem, and then you step in and fix it. So you create inflation with massive spending, and then you come in their convention and say the solution to that is price controls. This is the whole defund the police movement wasn't about defunding the police. It's about creating crime in cities so that you can federalize the police and have the federal police force step in and take over. And so all these things, we've got to see beyond the next step. You got to study these things in the context of history and understand.
Following the left's playbook, it's like, the left always, Trump is Hitler. That's their deal. Following the left's playbook, Adolf Hitler wanted everybody to be tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. You ever seen a picture of Hitler?
Short little guy
with beady eyes
black hair.
and dark hair. But he was like, "We are the Aryans." Okay, sure, Adolf.
Well,
I'm with you.
yeah, this interestingly enough, in the New York Times, this kind of surprised me this morning.
The Times is usually, I think, more left-leaning.
And I'm catching wind that the media was upset with how the DNC accredited them to cover their convention, or even denied them access to cover their convention. But they're somewhat critical of the fact that Kamala Harris has not done any media interviews or even a town hall since she was named the nominee for the Democrat Party. So they took it upon themselves to put together a list of questions, and some of them point blank identify her hypocrisy over time. I'm trying to find the one that there was one basically about immigration. You've changed your position on immigration. This is a question. These are questions they would ask her if she would actually talk to them, was the point of the interview
Right.
or the article. You once called for decriminalizing illegal border crossings. Now you're an immigration hawk who wants to secure the border.
Yeah.
Explain your evolution. And she won't.
Right. Of course.
But she's claiming but the media is seeming to get a little bit.
Says 4 years ago, you said it is actually wrong and backwards to think that more police officers will create more safety. Do you still believe that? She, what's she going to say? Yeah, I believe that. We want to defund the police still.
I mean, the fact that she's talking out of both sides of her mouth just frustrates the heck out of me that voters don't see it.
Right now, she has a lot of things she wants to do on day 4 years plus 1. And, I think that's the hard thing for her to make her case right now when it comes to the economy, or especially when it comes to the border, that she's been in charge of it for a while. And again, back to DEI, Department of Homeland Security came out with their strategic plan again, and number one goal and objective is DEI. It's not securing our border or securing our homeland. And, this is what we're getting from this government. And most Americans, and I think this is why you see RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and a lot of other independents and moderates, like, we just want to get back to sane governance.
That walked away from the Democrat Party. They may not have walked all the way to the right side, but how do you explain the report last week, and I'm sure you've seen it from the Inspector General about ICE, and this administration just losing 300,000 undocumented children into this country?
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris was quoted in October of 2020 about how appalling it was that the Trump administration had 545 children that they couldn't account for. We have 300,000.
Right.
You can do the math better than me. That's
600 times more.
Yeah, like 50,000% more, and here we are, and they have no clue, and they've got a bunch. I think it was like 20,000 of them have not shown up for their immigration hearings, and they've tried to deliver another 200,000+ notices and can't.
Yeah. We literally had representatives crying at the border, remember, putting
Kids
on the
in
big
cages,
show, kids
yeah.
in cages. We had a big, huge hearing, and oh my gosh, Trump's the evil man who's, using this facility that Obama built.
Right.
And going back to the cage, I've been to that facility. The reason for the cages instead of walls was so that people could have eyes on. It was fence. It was a so you can make sure that no one's getting assaulted in a corner somewhere.
Right.
Because kids will be kids.
And so, but you go from that where you had a handful of, and part of it was they were trying to find the parents. A lot of these parents were renting out their kids to the cartels to come. One of the stories I've told, I was down there visiting one of the facilities, and it would be comical if it wasn't, but a kid shows up with a family, tells the Border Patrol agent, hey, I need to go to the restroom. He's like, well, let me show you where it is. And he's like, oh, I know. He had been there several times before with different families coming across the border as part of the Rent-A-Kid program.
Yeah. Well, I think it was early in the Biden administration. They did DNA testing to see if these kids were even related to the people they were coming across. And they found 80% of them had no relation to the people bringing them across. And the Biden administration just said, well, we're not going to do that
And then
anymore.
the sponsors here are not vetted either. It's atrocious. It's a government-funded last chain of the human trafficking, this global human trafficking network. It's unconscionable. And yes, tens of thousands of kids have been lost, and because there's no political benefit to it, there's no remorse, there's no angst, there's no concern. Certainly, no one crying outside a facility. This is
300,000
pure
kids. That's the
evil.
population of Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
Plus.
New
Aces County. Adam Sugar sends us a comment question. It says, with the support for Trump being so overwhelming nationwide, if Kamala wins, how do we see it as anything but theft of our democracy? I'll expand on that and tell you that Ash and I did some research and looked at, there's a picture of Kamala coming off Air Force Two or whatever you would call it with her on it. And I've seen the actual picture, and I've seen the photoshopped picture that has all these people waving, and people are holding their phones up, videoing this, and people are right up underneath the wing of Air Force One, which is bogus. Nobody gets that close to that aircraft. And we're looking at the pictures, and the picture is just doctored. The screens of the people are not, the picture on the screen is not what they're videoing. It's obvious to us, and I can show you later that it's, you just have to take my word for it. It's a doctored photo. If they're willing to go to these lengths to create the media illusion that she's winning, that she's leading Trump in all these states, how do we have any confidence at all that they don't already have a plan in place to claim victory in November, blame Trump? He's already a felon. Of course he stole the election. What confidence do you have in this current climate of a fair election?
Well, and to add to what you're saying, just a month ago, they were talking about taking Kamala off the ticket until Biden had his debate, and then suddenly, oh, well, we have to get him, so let's go with Kamala. And you know, all we can do is what we can do. So we have to show up at the polls. We have to do everything we can. You know, we do town halls and forums and talk to people all the time, and election integrity will always come up because no doubt there's been. I think just recently Governor Abbott released that they took like astronomical, I want to say it was 1 million people off rolls that weren't on rolls in Texas. So
Virginia's done the same thing with several 100,000.
Right. And so a lot of states have done that. Of course, some states are trending the other way where they're trying to do everything they can to obfuscate the vote, or, you know, and the concern that you see when Democrats are like against limiting voting to citizens and those kind of things. I mean, they are doing everything they can. I never put anything past them, and I think we fail strategically when we do put things past them, saying, oh, they won't cross that bridge. Well, they've shown they'll cross whatever bridge they can to maintain power. What we can do is we can participate. We can show up at the polls. We can be a poll watcher. We can be an election judge. We can participate, you know, at the grassroots level, and then we're doing everything we can to like pass the SAVE Act
until they don't let you in, and then we
things.
find out that it doesn't matter at the election time. Like Andy Rokovich last election went to Philadelphia, they didn't let him into the polls.
Yeah.
So, Congressman, look up here, and you can see that this is a plane with your private jet, which you're quite familiar with. Michael came down this exact same stairwell. You can look at this plane. You can see in the reflection the beautiful paint job. There's nobody. the escalator in the back. There's clearly no reflection of any body in the fuel sludge. There you can see the lines on the tarmac reflected in the aircraft. It is a very shiny aircraft. Here is the engine. Now, same people coming on down the stairs. There's people, now there's a guard here, a military guard, and there's people right up underneath the very same photo, same tarmac, same lines. They're holding up. You see their cell phones are black. You see the faces when you expand the photo, the faces look like they've got hoods on.
What amazes me about this photo is look where I'm assuming that's Kamala on the steps there. She's about halfway down.
It was purported to be Kamala coming to a rally. That's what I'm telling you.
Within about 3 steps, we go from an empty tarmac to a completely full tarmac of people.
It was standing room only, and it was open seating. It was like a Southwest Airlines flight. Boom, there they are. They all came in at once.
Maybe that's what it was. They opened up line A, B, and C at one time to get to that plane.
See the phones? The phones are all blacked out. Nobody's videoing anything.
No.
It's very, very interesting to me, and it was purported, here's Kamala arriving at such and such.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They lie. They distort the truth and they lie.
It ought to scare you to death because they will come for you, sir. You think, they will come for you. You're going to need to be re-educated, Michael. That whole Constitution is just a silly piece of paper, and those rights, those aren't guaranteed rights, not if it involves misinformation, which you're a Republican, so your comments are always misinformation.
Well, we see this happening. You mentioned people getting arrested for violations of free speech, right? Or that's how they're coining it, I guess. But this is already happening in Europe. This isn't like this far cry. We see this happening already in nations that are just a half step ahead of us on this progressive road.
Trudeau is against free speech, right we
we got to get down to the core values. This isn't about personality. This isn't about even if you like someone's 100% platform. What's going to be so important. Again, this is why I think you see people like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, others coming across and saying, I don't agree with him 100%. I don't agree with Trump, but and they expect to have the disagreements, but on the core values of, does the Constitution matter? Should it be a guiding principle?
Well, look what they did. They came
Is
after Pavel
truth
Durov,
important?
right? The man who founded Telegram,
Yeah.
because he did not want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and created a very content-free or
But
regulation-free.
here's something we have to, all the solutions are not in Washington, though. And I don't take our role lightly, but some of this is generational, that we haven't taught these values. We haven't taught how important the Constitution
Amen.
is. We haven't, and it's going to take all of us making sure that we pass this on to the next generation. The battlefields of throughout history are important in passing on liberty to the next generation, but so are the battlefields of the mind, in the sense that we've got to raise our kids to understand apologetics and to understand the Constitution and to understand these core values, that the family is a building block of a healthy society. I mean, all these different things that used to be core values that everybody assumed. The issue is right now we have people running the country and then people voting who don't understand what has made America the great miracle and success story it is in history.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Isn't it
that,
crazy that we're having this conversation, though?
Well, they arrest Durov, basically accusing him of not controlling the content on Telegram and his platform. Yet, as John Paul Hall points out, Zuckerberg admitted that he was pressured by the Biden-Harris administration to censor Americans on COVID and the Hunter Biden laptop. So they want to come after you.
And this is after he spent, $400 million to help,
and that was just in Georgia, I think, right?
Right.
Crazy stuff.
So
I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's transition to the SAVE Act real quick, because and the budget, because there is a tie to this down the road, but it's probably too late for this election. But once again, why is Congress kicking the budget down the road? Yeah,
it's sad, but September 30th is coming up again, and we find ourselves at the same place we
The
find ourselves.
fiscal cliff.
The fiscal September 30th, it's here. Oh my gosh, who knew it was coming?
We had this exact conversation
I know,
last
didn't we?
year.
I know, last year.
It's exactly what
last
you
year's
said.
show.
Who knew?
What are Republicans doing to pressure Republicans to get this moving when Republicans control the House?
Hey, we're doing everything we can. From the Appropriations Committee, we passed go to Appropriations bills. We got them to the floor. And once again, we find ourselves like I wanted to stay. As much as I love being back in Texas, we have a lot of work to do right now. Let's get it done before the September deadline. Going forward, we've talked about things like, let's not have an August break right before September. That might be a good idea.
Yes.
Because we come back and we have 2-3 weeks to try to get this done, and it's just the possibility of that happening is very slim. And so, but we recognize that we can't just keep kicking the can down the road. And so we've a few of us gotten together and we've said that, hey, we've urged the speaker to attach the SAVE Act to if we have to go to the CR route, if that's the way they're going to go, and it appears that's the way there is, let's not just kick the can down the road. Let's attach the SAVE Act to it, which would basically, right now it is illegal to vote in a federal election if you're not an American citizen. And so you'll
The
even see
horror
this.
of that, the unfairness of that.
Well, and all they do, and I'll tell you, I know somebody who voted in the last election, and all they did was postpone his naturalization by 3 years. They should have kicked him out of the damn country, in my mind.
But the thing is you can't. There's no requirement to show proof right now, so you can, and then post haste after the election, you can find out that somebody on the rolls was an American citizen, and you can discipline that vote or that voter, that illegal voter, but the vote. That person's vote is still in the pot somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's
and you
getting
can't-
where people from
you can't reach in
Venezuela
and take it out.
They'll just fly into the country, vote, get on their plane, and fly back home. Why not?
They'll probably just request a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, to Venezuela.
And so they know this, the left knows this, and this is why you'll see stories like, it's already illegal. I mean, it's, well, yeah, but it's not enforced.
Kathleen Leiniger echoes many of our constituents. She says, I'm okay with shutting it down versus kicking the can down the road. No
Yeah.
more continuing resolutions.
Where's Speaker Johnson on this with your bills that you passed out of approps and such? Or is he in favor of the kicking it down the road to get to the CR point?
I wish I could tell you we're willing to hold the line and have a fight on these sort of things. I haven't seen that much yet. It seems to be the safest path, which is how we've gotten where we've gotten. Is my contingency. And
Here's the truth. They don't
holding
want to
it there is
shut down the
like, well,
government 2 months before an election
Right.
and have everybody say the dang Republicans are the ones that took away my X benefit.
And no doubt they would, but I'd certainly like to see the vote in the Senate on you have a choice between either funding the government and securing our elections and saying that no non-U.S. citizen can vote in the election,
Right.
or not
Right.
funding the government. I mean, is it that important to you to allow illegals to vote that you're willing to not fund the government? That's a good. I think you can win that messaging battle.
How do you-
And I found it interesting with the Supreme Court saying, okay, Arizona, you can ask for proof of citizenship when they register, but you can't ask for it again when they actually show up to vote, which doesn't, I can't compute the two. If you need one here, why wouldn't you need one here?
Yeah, that.
But how do you fix it?
Seems
Your
like a John Roberts
task
special.
is arduous when you've got half of Americans don't pay income tax, and the other half votes themselves more and more entitlements as if the pot of money is endless. And the left capitulates and says, well, we'll just print more money because everybody deserves X, Y, and Z.
That's where this moment of time when we're looking at our government and everything that needs to be fixed in our government, and certainly it does, but this is also a gut check for us as a nation. I mean, this is a
Amen.
cultural issue, and we've got to get back to understanding duty and honor and those sorts of things. I recently saw a chart of the indebtedness of the United States coming out of World War II. Tremendous. I mean, we were in more debt than we've ever been, and that generation paid it down. Not all the way. I wish we would have gotten to zero, but
Then
but
Social
now we're
Security
back to
kicked
those
in,
levels
we-
without the wars, and so this is something we're going to have to realize. What do we want? Freedom, or do we want a government do we want a nanny state? Do we want our freedoms taken away from us by a government that's going to meddle in every area of our life? Freedom is risky. I always point to the national anthem, where you come to the land of the free, home of the brave, and we always think of that in the context of those who serve in uniform, and we should. But those are two ideas that are connected: freedom and bravery. It's not for the faint of heart. We're not a country for the faint of heart. There's plenty of other countries who can be a nanny state. Americans weren't built in that ethic.
I don't think people take us serious when we tell them the day is fast approaching if the left is in control, where you're going to pull into Speedy Stop, stick your debit card into the machine, and it's going to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Cloud, you've reached your allotment for fossil fuels this month. And it's coming. It is coming. They're going to monitor everything. They're already
That's
at the
the
point.
idea behind the 15-minute cities that Edmonton, Alberta, Canada just basically voted, or the city council there voted in for themselves, that set their city up into 15 different districts from what they had. And basically they've admitted they're all just 15-minute districts, so you can't move, and they're going to rely on public transportation. We really don't want you leaving the district for anything. They want to
It
control
limits
you.
communication. It allows you to control the media. It's coming.
There's been discussion. You look at the Green New Deal and carbon and how we've, using that as a means to control production and all that discussion. There's been talks about, looking at pollen as a public good. And you think of what that means in the sense of controlling property. It's basically an attack against private property. That I'm not saying is the next step, but it's if we keep going this direction we're going, that's the kind of ideology and philosophies that you see, to where you end up using these sort of niche arguments, but you're really controlling industry, you're really controlling private property, you're really coming against these bedrock principles of what it takes to build a society, and certainly a free society.
Where are you off to today, sir?
We are headed north. We got some economic development people to meet with, and north part of the district. Last week was pretty cool. We had about 4 days of straight Navy and military. So we went to Pensacola Naval Air Station and
Very nice.
got to see, because we have Corpus Christi Naval Air Station. Of course, Kingsville's just outside of our district. Those pilots who are training for the Navy land here at the Victoria Airport, and so just getting a better understanding of what lessons can we learn from there and take
He went
here.
to fly with the Blue Angels. That's what he did.
I
He flew
tried
with
to
the
get them
Blue
to pick me
Angels.
up, but that didn't happen. We it was United, but I
You
told them
could've got
I
there
tried
a
I
lot
tried to
quicker.
convey to them what a time saver it would be if they could just pick me up here and we could get.
How
there.
do we get white sand beaches on this side of the?
Yeah.
the
So
Gulf?
so a lot of good lessons learned, but then Saturday was pretty cool. They christened the USS Kingsville, and so we got to be there
very
for
nice.
that, and straight out of Port of Corpus Christi, and you know, that's just, my dad was a shipbuilder, a Navy shipbuilder growing up, and so I remember going to these things where you marvel at both what we can build, but also those willing to serve, and so it was cool to be there, and then also to tour the ship and see.
One
what's
of
going
our
on.
was Adam a Marine or an Army guy? I think he was Army.
I think it was Army.
Adam Sugar, you said last week was straight Navy. He said straight Navy, no such thing.
Well, yesterday, just so you know, we were at the Corpus Christi Army Depot
There you go.
for a groundbreaking.
I never hesitate to ask you, where are you off to today?
Another-
Because you're never going to say, oh, no, I'm just going
I'm
to be
just
at the
go
house.
home and
Call me.
kick my
Oh
feet
yeah,
up.
yeah, we're
never
all
happens.
over the place. This is it's a lot of ground to cover.
Well, thank
in
you
a
for
short
coming
time. We
here.
certainly love it. And,
We,
encourage everybody
we
to
deeply
stay connected.
respect and appreciate the accessibility, and we think you're doing a great job. You know, those 2 votes really matter, I know, but it's true. We do think you're doing a great
We
job.
appreciate you stopping by and
So-